Welcome on in to Inside Black and Gold, folks. Steve Geller currently protesting daylight savings, along with Jeff Nowak here, bringing you our, legal tampering edition of the podcast. Jeff, I know it's going to be a wild one today, and we're live for the first time in a while.
We are, but I need to go back. I need to understand how would you functionally protest daylight saving time?
I'm just being a cranky old man curmudgeon and just bitching to everybody. That's really the only way I can protest.
So you could make a statement and just show up an hour, what would it be, early to everything? No, it'd be an hour late. So you'd be like, hey, I'm like Arizona. I stay on one time zone.
That is my dream, is to be like Arizona and stay on one time zone.
If you want to make plans with me, understand that you're working on my time zone. I'm not coming to yours. And that includes booking the show. That might be problematic.
A little bit.
Steve, the show starts at 4. Like, I'm at 4 my time, baby. I'm not.
Right.
Anyway, that's where we're at. Yeah, I still, it takes me a couple days. It takes my brain a couple days to, like, I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning. I know that's not even the direction that the time went. Like, it went forward, but just my brain couldn't figure out what time it was. And I was just laying in bed, like, I guess I'll get up. And then there was like flooding that happened that my wife had to get up and deal with. So I was awake anyway, driving around at 6 a.m. Either way.
Fun
podcast. We're here. We're doing this live for a good reason, which is recording a podcast on the morning of the unofficial start of free agency is a terrifying endeavor. We have one-star review on our podcast right now, at least from the perspective of what they told us about. And it was because we recorded a podcast, posted it, and then in the intervening time, something happened that we didn't talk about. And they were like, you guys suck. You didn't even talk about it. So the goal is to get this up and out as quickly as possible. And to do that, we're going to do it live. So how this episode is going to work is it's going to be two kind of separate editions, one for the actual podcast, one for the YouTube channel. If you are listening on the podcast, the second segment of this is going to be an interview that Steve and I did with Michael Giannetti, the co-founder and CEO of SpotTrack. You know, you've probably ended up, if you've ever looked up information about a player's contract, there's a good chance you've landed on one of SpotTrack or Over the Cap. Those are kind of the two brand names in contract listings on the internet. So that's going to be a conversation we have that you'll get on the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to roll straight from our rundown segment, which we're going to break down all of the targets, all of who we're looking to see the Saints go after in free agency. What are our thoughts on some veterans potentially leaving, some of the early deals that have happened, early extensions. The Saints haven't extended anybody other than Julian Blackmon to this point, which is unusual, but I think kind of signals that the team is kind of going a different direction in terms of cap management. So we'll talk a good bit about that. And then from there on the YouTube channel, we're going to roll directly into a live mailbag, which will be about the time that the legal tampering period opens. So it'll give us a chance to answer viewer questions, as many as there are, and then react if there are any big breaking contracts that come through immediately, which is always funny to me when you look at it and you say, oh, the legal tampering period opened, and within like 20 minutes, you have these massive contracts being handed out. It's like, wow, they really got a lot done in those 20 minutes.
Amazing.
So we'll see how all that goes. But how you feeling about everything, Steve? You feeling good?
Yeah, definitely looking forward to this cycle of things, just because, you know, trying to beef up this roster ahead of the NFL draft, which I was curious for you. I asked you this morning, I'm like, we're not doing another mock, right? Because this period is going to drastically change a lot of mock drafts for folks, I think.
Oh, it definitely is. And I think that's where a lot of people get it backwards, is people talk about, we spend so much time talking about, hey, what should they go after in free agency? This, that, and the other thing. And I hear a lot of people say, well, this player's in the draft, so the team won't be going after this position in free agency because they could just draft this player. And that's almost never what happens, because unless you're drafting number one overall, if you're the Raiders, right, you know you don't have to go after a quarterback because you're getting the quarterback, right? So there's some level of that. And even if you drafted number 2 overall, you know you're going to get the choice of anyone who's not Fernando Mendoza. So you can maybe assess it that way. If you're sitting at 8, where the Saints are, you worry about the draft when the draft is here, right? Like, you have to approach your free agency needs as if the draft doesn't exist, because you just cannot guarantee what you're going to get. But the opposite is definitely true. If you go out and you sign a top of the market running back, suddenly the scales of like, hey, should you draft Jeremiah Love at number 8 tip a little. They don't tip
Right.
all the way, but it stops being a need for you because you addressed it in free agency. Now, if you don't address something in free agency and you get to the draft and you're like, okay, what do I do now? That's one thing. But yeah, it's the Saints. I'm fascinated to see, and we're going to hit a quick break and come back and talk more about this. But I do think that they're kind of entering a new era of cap management that we haven't really seen them do yet, because like we haven't seen them operate with a rookie scale quarterback ever. Think about it. When's the last time the Saints weren't pinning a significant chunk of their salary cap to the quarterback position? It hasn't existed. At least not since this front office took over. And I mean, you could look at some of the early 2000 stuff, but since Drew Brees showed up in 2006, they have been veteran quarterback all the way through. And I think that's going to change some things. And it becomes, and I say this as a preamble to a lot of the stuff, a lot of the people who are around this team for a long time predict is going to happen could end up being wrong, because I do think that we're kind of in a paradigm shift right now.
Yeah, the only we were thrust upon the Ian Book era, and that just was closed very quickly.
Yeah, but even then, you still had the veteran quarterbacks.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like the closest you came was during the Jameis Andy Dalton days, where you were combining to pay like $25 million to the quarterback position, which is like, okay. But either way, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and go through all of the headlines that have come up over the past week since we recorded a podcast. Remember, we're going to get into a mailbag in the back end of it. So if you're sitting in there, you have a comment, you have a question, throw it in there, and we will get to it in the final segment of this program. We're going to get to that around 11 in the start of the legal tampering period. So any headlines that come out, we can kind of hit them really quick. It's really just a way for me to make sure that if something happens early in the process, we're around to talk about it and then can react to it. But otherwise, this is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We are in 20 minutes, give or take, away from the start of the legal tampering period of free agency. It's going to be a lot to talk about. I'm excited about it. Who dat? Stick around. And we are back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak here alongside Steve Geller, and we are getting ready. This is a live stream episode, getting you ready for the start of NFL free agency. As of today, the legal tampering period will have opened. And what does that mean? It means that teams can start officially talking to agents and hammering out the specifics of contracts, none of which can become official, or at least free agents on other teams, none of which can become official until Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central, which is officially the start of the new league year. It also holds some cap implications for the Saints in terms of when dead money becomes official. But Steve, just first things first, how aggressive do you want to see the Saints be in this free agency period?
I guess for certain positions, like to me, I feel like guard is a necessary addition in free agency. So would love to see them attack that first.
Yeah, you know, in our mock drafts, I had one comment being like, "These are both terrible because neither of you drafted a guard." And and here's the thing, like there are positions of need, right? Guard is a position of need, but the need is a starter.
Yes.
Right. And if you don't have a starter, then you have a need. Once you sign someone to be a starter, then you're not going into the draft saying I desperately have to draft a guard. You want to draft a guard if there's someone there that you think is a good option, you add them. But you're not just drafting a guard reflexively in the second round because you felt like you had a need going into the offseason. The ideal scenario was you go and you sign somebody. And it's going to be interesting to see some of these big contracts that come through right away and how they kind of set the market. Just to kind of hit a few former Saints that have signed contracts and at positions that the Saints, I feel like, are still kind of wide open on. Blake Grupe, he signed a $1.4 million contract with the Colts, which is pretty low end. If you weren't paying attention, after Blake Grupe left the Saints, or got cut by the Saints, I should say, he went 11 for 11, including a 60-yard go-ahead field goal in the final minute against the Seahawks, the eventual champions. Should have been, people say he can't make clutch kicks. Like that. If I'm the Colts, all I saw was a kicker who made all of his kicks. So, the Saints have Charlie Smith. I'm sure they're going to roll it back with him and maybe bring in some competition, but it is what it is. Blake Gillikin, a 1 year, $2.65 million contract with the Cardinals. The Saints haven't had a viable punter since they got rid of him.
That was still kind of a head scratcher to me. While that was not that he was saying this all pro punter, but didn't make sense why they moved on from Gillikin to me.
It was a purely attitude driven move. It was not a roster driven decision. It was the coordinator and the player did not get along and you moved on. Right. I think Darren Rizzi has a strong personality and he wanted things done a certain way and they weren't getting done the way he wanted. So he was like, I'll go with the guy who's going to do what I ask him to do. And he brought in Lou Hedley, and you could say all the crap you want about Lou Hedley. He executed the plan, which was, I don't want to give up any return yards. And gosh darn it, he did not do that. Now he averaged like 36 yards a punt, but none of those came on returns. Anyway, so Saints still need a punter, and I have no idea what they're going to do at that position. I do not think that Kroger is the answer. We'll see. Maybe, I do want to say, hey, give him a chance to come back in year 2 and improve, because I think that is one of the issues you have is every year you're going with a new rookie and then he looks like a rookie and not that great. And you're like, okay, but guys get better over time and we don't give him any time. Anyway, a couple others. Sheldon Rankins.
Stankin' Rankins, man.
Contract extension with the Texans, or at least $12 million guaranteed. I hear a lot of people talking about Trey Hendrickson and some of the other guys that you've let walk. You look at Sheldon Rankins' career and you're like, why couldn't you keep him around? Like, I feel like he's a guy that you wouldn't have minded having over the last several years. And, obviously injuries are what they are. He started all 17 games on a really good Texans defense last year.
Was always fun to talk to around Thanksgiving because he gave his take on things and was always a fan of food, so it was fun to hear his takes.
A lot of those big boys on the interior.
Yeah, exactly.
Who was the player they drafted and was really good for the Bears?
Akeem Hicks.
Akeem Hicks. He's like the new Akeem Hicks, right? Like a guy. It's like, oh yeah, the Saints drafted him, but they didn't get nearly as much
right.
The impact from the player they drafted as other teams seem to be. And Sheldon was good when he was here. He just kept getting hurt. I don't blame him for letting him walk. It's just kind of funny. Like, he's one of those guys that we never talk about as a former Saint. And one other, Eric Wilson. Remember Eric Wilson?
No.
He was a linebacker for the Saints in Dennis Allen's first year. His biggest impact for this team was teaching us all the correct way to say Nephi Sewell.
Okay.
That's who Eric Wilson is. He was here for a training camp. He was also on the Vikings defense the year that Alvin went off for 6 touchdowns on Christmas. That's Eric Wilson. He signed a 3-year, $22.5 million contract with the Vikings. So kind of interesting. And the Saints didn't let him walk. They put him on the practice squad. I remember vividly because he ended up getting signed off the Saints practice squad to the Packers, I believe. And it was funny because they had just played the Vikings in London, and the Packers were going to London and signed Eric Wilson. And I think he just stayed behind. I don't think he went back with the team. So I think he just stayed there because he had back-to-back trips to London. But yeah, so a couple of those contracts. The Saints have not made any contract extensions. So,
also saw the Bears are bringing back DeMarco Jackson, a former draft pick for the Saints.
I like DeMarco Jackson.
Yeah.
The Saints just have all these linebackers kind of in the league that it's just, Caden Ellis is out there. I think he's a free agent this year. DeMario Davis is going to be negotiating with teams as of 11 o'clock today.
Anzalone, I think, is a free agent, right?
Alex Anzalone is a free agent coming off a couple good years with the Lions. So, the Saints have kind of been a linebacker factory. Zach Bond,
who knew?
Obviously. But yeah, and there's a few other free agency topics that could impact the Saints. Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa have both been said peace, despite massive dead cap hits.
99 million, Jeff, for Tua. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Sean Payton's just saying, hit the road, Russ.
Yeah,
has empowered all these other teams to be like, you know what? I guess it's worth it to get it right. Because the Broncos are in the AFC Championship and the Dolphins are like, we will not get there with Tua. But, both of these players, you look at a team like the Falcons, you look at some of these teams that need quarterbacks, and I think Kyler is going to be ahead on that list in terms of who would get the first shot, because I think the concussion history is going to scare some teams off. But I don't know. I kind of feel like someone's going to trade for Mac Jones, and then one of those guys is going to go to the QB car wash over there in San Francisco. That's my prediction.
No, I mean, there's definitely, I'm seeing some of the, Twitter sphere rumors already that the Atlanta Falcons would be interested in bringing in Tua Tagovailoa. Have at it, Atlanta. Go for it.
Is it just so they could have multiple left-handed quarterbacks?
Maybe that's the case.
It's
They're
not
lefty
a terrible
specialists over there.
I do think it's funny when you have a left-handed quarterback. Like it can be tough because your backup comes in and suddenly everything flips, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're a left-handed quarterback, your right tackle is your blindside tackle. So you're blocking different ways, right? Like you're considering plays differently, and then you bring another guy in, everything flips around. I do think there would be some value in having both left-handed, like first string, second string QBs. I don't know, maybe, who knows? I always think it's weird. It looks bad. It just looks wrong to me when the ball comes out of the left hand. It just doesn't seem right. But hey, it is what it is. One other thing I want to talk about that's not Saints related, it kind of is Alec Pierce. Go look at his numbers and understand that this man is about to get a contract extension contract somewhere in the north of $30 million a year. Alec Pierce. And this is not me talking down about Alec Pierce.
But come on.
But like when we're going to be talking about a Chris Olave contract extension throughout a majority of this offseason, and you're talking about a guy who has only once sniffed 1,000 yards, and it was this past year. He caught 47 passes for 1,003 yards, 6 touchdowns. Last year it was 37 catches for 824 yards and 7 touchdowns. Like, this is why when you hear me talking about Chris Olave and saying like it's a no-brainer extension, like it's gonna happen, watch what Alec Pierce gets. And then say, like, if you're Chris Olave's agent, be like, you're gonna pay me more than that. Because look what this guy has done compared to what that guy's done. But I still don't think I think that's definitely gonna happen this offseason, and it's really just gonna be later on once you kind of get a picture of free agency.
Yeah, I know some folks were clamoring why haven't the Saints gotten it done. It's like that's not really, it is a priority, but it's not at the way top of the list needs to be done right now. Opportunity for them.
No, and I don't think there's any value in Chris Olave getting it done now. I mean,
see what else and other deals guys are getting, right?
Exactly. Like I guess the risk would be Alec Pierce's market falls off a cliff and somehow he signs for something way low, and that hurts Chris Olave's market. But I think anyone with a set of eyeballs who's been paying attention to his contracts over the last few years can see like it's only going up, So he's only going to benefit from waiting this out. And I think the Saints benefit from waiting in the sense of it just gives them some flexibility for what they can do. And, we can kind of shift into that topic now, which is there have only been 2 contract restructures, like straight up restructures, executed officially right now. And that is Jawan Johnson, 6.29 million cleared, and Justin Reed, 6.36 million cleared. Chase Young's contract, while it has been reported that it's been restructured, it has not been officially processed yet. And it makes you wonder if they're considering doing something else with that contract, like just signing him to an early extension, which would have the same function, but it would just add a year or two onto that contract. Like I almost think that would be a better, if you can get Chase to agree to an early extension and turn that 2 years remaining into 2, 3, or 4 years. That's what I would do if I'm the Saints. So it makes me wonder if they're considering doing that instead. Either way, without that restructure, they had already gotten clear of the salary cap. I think that's why you can be patient on it. And then the other move they made that cleared $8.12 million in cap space is they converted Alvin Kamara's contract, took his base salary down from what it was around 11 something to the league minimum at about 1.3. And they converted the rest of that base salary into a prorated, non-guaranteed bonus. And I am not going to sit here and try to explain to you the mechanics of what they did, because I would get it wrong. It is very convoluted and complicated, but it's what I will say is it's something that they set up last year. So this was a long planned item that they were looking at it, and they were looking at these CBA rules, and they were like, we can do this over 2 years. And that's why they didn't mess around with Alvin's contract last year. But so the important thing to know is it cleared up $8 million in cap space right now. It almost, and we'll talk more about this, and we talk more about this with Michael Giannetti from Spot Track. Like, he gives us kind of the insider explanation of what it is. So I'll kind of let him do that. And again, that's going to be in the podcast, and it'll be on the YouTube feed later as a standalone video. But all things considered right now, you're about $11 million clear of the salary cap, with another $10 million potential to come if they just restructure Chase Young's contract. That kind of gives you all the wiggle room you need right now to be as aggressive as you need to be, with a lot more still sitting there in terms of Eric McCoy could restructure and save like 6 to 8 million. Carl Granderson's in that range, 6 to 8 million. Cesar Ruiz is in that range, around 6 million. You could potentially restructure Pete Werner for another 4 million. Like, it's all kind of right there for you. And it just comes down to, hey, how aggressive do you want to be in this free agency class?
Yeah, the thing is, like we're talking about, the Saints are so close to having some of that freedom, I guess you would say, with the salary cap. I don't know if you're going to see this team like go uber aggressive into free agency. I do expect them to target some key pieces and all, but they're not just going to be throwing money around.
No, and I do think that, we'll talk about the players that are going to be free agents here in a second. Like, I do think that not extending anybody signals a shift in terms of in the last several years, we've seen them come to early deals with players. And in large part, it was because you needed that cap flexibility from pushing their dead cap charges back just to make ends meet and get the job done. You don't have to do that this year. And the more you don't do that, the less you have to worry about it in the future. And to me, it signals, hey, we're willing to accept some dead cap charges, right? You could theoretically let Cam Jordan, let Demario Davis contract void and still bring them back, eat the dead cap charges, and still pay them on a new contract if it's 1 year, 2 years. And that will just account for, after this year, that contract. And so the question stops being, okay, how much can we save? And it becomes, who's the best option? Right? They're like, what's the best bang for our buck? If we're going to spend $6 million on a linebacker, is Demario Davis the best option? If we're going to spend $8 million on a defensive end, is Cam Jordan the best option? If the answer is yes, then yeah, you do it. If the answer is no, then you have the flexibility to go a different direction. And that flexibility is something that the Saints just simply have not had over the last 5-6 years, that they have now because of some of the pragmatic decision-making they've started on since the Derek Carr retirement and kind of resetting the deck.
Yeah, you mentioned Derek Carr there, and I don't know, with the other QBs that are on the market right now, it's not a great class of available options, but there's still been really no kind of buzz of anybody really interested in making that move for Carr.
No, that's not surprising to me. Like I think trading him pre-draft has always kind of been a pipe dream. Now, maybe once you get past free agency, and so if there's a team out there that feels like they have a roster, misses out on some of these free agent quarterbacks, and says, "Hey, that's there," maybe that happens. But I think it's more likely you get into training camp, a team that feels like a contender has their quarterback go down, and suddenly who's the best option?
Yeah,
and that's also considering Derek Carr has a no trade clause. So even if there were teams circling, who knows? I think the Jets continue to be an option. That's the team that if there was a team that was willing to go out and make a trade, it would be the team without a quarterback. Now, exactly what do you see the Jets' long-term outlook and short-term outlook? That's a question. But hey, we're where we are. So let's talk about, okay, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan. 2 minutes from now, they will be cleared. It's about 10:58 as I say this. They will be cleared to negotiate with other teams. Their contracts do not void until 4 p.m. Eastern, so 3 p.m. Central on March 11th. So these next 48 hours, I think, are critical in terms of if the Saints are trying to get one of these guys back and push their dead cap charge down the line, Demario Davis would be about 14, Cam Jordan would be about 18, then they would have to get it done by March 11th. So I do think like the fact finding right now for those players and seeing exactly what their market's going to be and who's willing to offer those contracts is going to kind of determine that. And so my question for you, if you could only sign one of those players, right, which I think is feasible. We've heard that Cam Jordan, there's been reports that he's expected to reach free agency and not get an extension done with the Saints prior to March 11th. We haven't heard that about Demario Davis, and I think that silence is a little telling of the likelihood that happens. But if you had to pick one of those two guys, who would it be?
That's definitely tough. I know both are, up there in age right now. We both saw them put up significant numbers last season and looking like there's still plenty left in the tank. If I got to pick one, though, I don't know. I'm going to stay loyal to the guy that got drafted by the Saints and Cam Jordan. Hopefully can get a 1-year deal done just for all the work. I know it's terrible to say this, Jeff, but for all the work he does outside of the locker room, it means a ton to the community here. And it would just be awful to me in the long run to see him wearing another uniform. And I still think he could be a good rotational piece for you. I don't know if 10.5 sacks is necessarily a realistic opportunity for him going into next year, but I do think he is by far a valuable piece that needs to remain a Saint for his entire career. It would just be wrong to see him in another uniform.
Yeah, so there's two pieces to the conversations. Like who do you think from a team's perspective you want to keep around from an on-field perspective, and then there's from a locker room perspective, from a culture perspective. That would be a bummer to see Cam Jordan. And you've seen that, right? Like you see the JJ Watt as a Cardinal. Like those, like Travis or Zach Ertz, right? Like he's. Why do they always end up on the Cardinals? I don't know. Oh no, he went to the Commanders.
It is both of them though. Like DeMario and Cam, you can't let both go. I feel like because that would be like an immediate you just suck the air out of the locker room with leadership on the defensive side.
Yeah, but at a certain point, that's what you should do. Like, I think one of the issues the Saints have run into is they've been too loyal to veteran players, and they've used the cap charges as an excuse to do that. And it's like, yeah, like Cam Jordan's still playing at a high level. Demario Davis is still playing at a high level. That doesn't mean that you can't replace them. That doesn't mean that you can't find a Zach Bond. That doesn't mean that you can't put a player in there and have a lot of success, right? Like, you think the Falcons are disappointed that they ended up with Caden Ellis? You don't think the Saints would have been just fine with Caden Ellis? So I think that's where I'm at, and I'm letting both walk. If I'm being entirely honest, like it's a new era. It's time. Like if they want to play forever, they can play forever. You did the same thing with Jari Evans. You let Jari Evans walk. You let Teron Armstead walk.
Yep.
And I don't think they're disappointed about either of those decisions. If they want to take a team-friendly deal and stick around, great.
Yeah. I definitely think there'll be more of that market for DeMario.
I agree. But I'm past the point where I'm giving a guy an extension that's more than he's worth just to accommodate the culture that has not worked, right? You have missed the playoffs for 5 seasons in a row. It's time to start doing things differently, at least on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't know. Well, so we'll see. Like, I would love to see Cam back. I think if I had to pick one of them, I'd pick Cam, because I think I could get Cam back at a 1-year, $8 million contract. If I draft an edge rusher, he'd be a good guy to potentially, foster that guy. And then at the linebacker position, I could go after Quay Walker or somebody that is younger and has a lot of upside. Just makes sense, right? So we'll see.
I see we are past the period now. It is officially legal tampering time in the NFL.
Correct. And the big contract that I think is going to go to a Saints player this offseason is going to be Alontae Taylor. He's made it pretty clear that he expects to leave the Saints. Like, he wouldn't rule out coming back to the Saints, but I think the issue that you have there, and the issue that the Saints always knew was going to come, is they want to pay him as a nickel corner at about, I don't know, somewhere in the range of $13 million a year, just because that's the top of the nickel corner market. And he's going to want to get paid in the top 15 of the outside cornerback market, which is about where Paulson Adebo is. And that's going to be about $18 million a year. And you just can't square that. So sounds like he's going to walk. He's done a lot of interviews that's made that clear. He's put out tweets that made that clear, even though there was some question as to whether that was his actual Twitter account, because it only has 2,000 followers. But all right, the reason we're doing this live is so we can do this. We got our first bit of breaking news here. We talked about Alec Pierce and what that contract is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Just came down 4 years, $114 million.
4 years, 113 for Alec Pierce.
Yes.
Well,
so that ends up being, this doesn't make sense. The highest paid free agent receiver in NFL history, but that doesn't jive, because that's about $28 million per year. So I must be missing something. Either way, 4 years, $114 million. That's the Alec Pierce contract.
I mean, it's hard to. I'm glad it's not the Saints paying that money, but good for the Colts there. I don't know what to say. That seems really inflated for a guy that has decent production, but is not game-changing production.
Yeah, Steve, sometimes I have a hard time keeping track because I keep looking at your face and you're making the same face, but it's just because you're frozen. So don't worry about it. Steve's there. But yeah, and here's the thing. Like, when that Chris Olave's contract comes down, people are going to have the same reaction. So I can't sit here and be like, wow, I can't believe they did that. Like, you got to pay to keep your players. And we'll see how that goes. But that's the big contract right now. And that's it makes sense, right? Like, the Colts, they franchise tagged Daniel Jones. You see, Daniel Jones was looking for a $50 million a year contract.
Yeah. Saints are also not in that situation.
Yeah. And the Colts were like, you know what? No, we're going to franchise tag you. We're going to pay you about 40 for 1 year. But we'll see how that goes. But all right, let's take a quick break and come back and dive into our mailbag, talk about free agent possibilities for the Saints. Who are their targets? Make sure to get your questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. There's not a ton in there right now, so this is prime question asking time for the mailbag. If you're listening to the podcast, we're going to throw to an interview that we did with CEO and co-founder of SpotTrack, Michael Giannetti, break down the Alvin Kamara contract extension. Break down the Alvin Kamara contract restructure, redistribution. I don't know what the word you'd want to use is there, but let's call it the Dion rule. It's what they used to establish that. Some other topics, why the Eagles are running toward the same type of cliff the Saints were in about 2022. They're doing it right now. We'll talk about that and a lot of other things. Otherwise, this is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We're diving in on free agency. Stick around. We'll be right back. And we are back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak here alongside Steve Geller. We're there. It is officially the legal tampering period for the NFL. It is 11:07 a.m. Central Time as I state this. The teams will have roughly 48 hours, a little more than 48 hours to go back and forth with agents, establish contracts, whatever. The Alec Pierce deal has come down, which is interesting, right? Like I do wonder what happened in the first 2 minutes of the illegal tampering period that let Alec Pierce's camp be like, you know what, it's time. I don't know, because they could have got that deal done at any point. So maybe they sent a couple texts around and said, "Hey, you gonna match this?" And everyone said no.
I mean, like I said, the QB market we know is off the charts, and the wide receiver market seems to be catching up to it, sadly.
Oh, well, I mean, the wide receiver market is the craziest market. Like QB market is whatever, but you can at least justify it in the sense that quarterback's the most important position on your team, right? Like if you don't have a quarterback, you're not getting much done. It doesn't really matter how good your team is if you don't have the quarterback. And sure, there's some exceptions, right? Like there's times where you look at the Rex Grossman Bears and the defense was so good that it didn't really matter whether Rex Grossman could get it done. Trent Dilfer with the Ravens, those are very rare situations. You need the quarterback. Wide receiver, there aren't a ton of examples of overpaying your wide receiver actually working out long term, right? Like you look at the Eagles, it's like, yeah, they overpaid AJ Brown, but that's a toxic situation right now, and the way they operate, I don't know. What do? You can't trade him, and at least it doesn't look like you can trade him, and you're kind of stuck. So hey, it is what it is. You got to do it, but I don't know if Mark Schlereth hates the wide receiver market. He always gets annoyed. He calls it like the biggest con in sports that receivers have convinced the teams that they're worth $30 million a year.
Divas of the NFL.
Yeah. But then you look at the other side, and the cornerbacks are making a ton of money too. So it is what it is. But let's get into the mailbag. And Mitch Hugenrad 7019 drops a question in here, and it's what I wanted to get into anyway. It says, any predictions for the Saints in free agency? And so what are the targets, right? Like what are the positions I'm targeting?
Yeah.
If I had to say, hey, okay, guard, running back, defensive back, if DeMario leaves, linebacker, a mid-level wide receiver, not a top-end wide receiver, and then a tight end. Those are the positions that I'm kicking the tires on players. I don't expect to solve all of those, but it does kind of create, hey, if I can get 3 or 4 of those positions handled in free agency, and then I can go to the draft and get something done there, that's what I'm looking at. What does that kind of jive with what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You mentioned secondary, huh? Because Alante is likely on his way out.
Yeah, defensive back, right? Slot corner is really what I'm looking for there. Because I just don't want to. I don't like the idea of drafting starters, and that's not to say I don't want to draft starting caliber players. Of course, I want to draft starting caliber players, right. But I don't like the idea of going into a draft and saying I need to draft this guy because he's going to start for me. If they win the job, fantastic. But I hate handing jobs to rookies that have not earned it. And the Saints rarely do that, and I don't expect them to start doing that. So where do I start? The top of the market for me, the one position that I'm willing to go above and maybe reset some things is guard.
I'm
right.
With you.
And so who are the candidates? David Edwards is the top. I think you have to be on David Edwards until you're off David Edwards. He's right. The top target. If he gets to in the $28 million range, I don't know if you can really go that high. And then I'm on to the two B targets to me are Elijah Vera Tucker and Zion Johnson, both because they're in the age range I want, which is like 26 to 28. I want 3 to 4 good years. If I'm going to pay at the top of the market for a guard, I need 3 to 4 years out of that player. I'm not paying $20 million for a 1-year rental for a Wyatt Teller if he's 32 years old or whatever he is. Kevin Zeitler's up there in age. Like, I need to know that the player I'm paying is going to be here for an extended period.
Yeah, one of those targets, and Ed Ingram ended up staying with Houston right before free agency opened up.
Okay. Yeah, and then the low end, I could see the Saints trying the Mekhi Becton route just because of the familiarity with Kellen Moore. Right. And if not, like you could still go after an Evan Neal even and say, this is our reclamation project. This Kellen does seem to love a reclamation project. He tried it last year with Trevor Penning. It didn't quite work out. Hey, they could go sign Trevor Penning for nothing if they wanted to.
I think we'll pass.
I agree. And then it is funny. Once you have a player in the building and then you kind of move off them, it's really hard to justify getting him back. Then running back to me, Kenneth Walker III's on the market. I'm kind of fascinated to see where he sets the ceiling at, because Travis Etienne feels like the guy. Number one's available. Well, if assuming Alontae Taylor leaves, number one will be available for him, which, I saw a couple tweets being like, who's going to wear number one next year? I'm like, I don't know. It's probably that guy.
Yeah, to me, the amount of money that the Saints would have to throw at Kenneth Walker just doesn't make sense. And honestly, I'm curious to see even ATN's market. I don't know if they're going to really be players in that.
I think they will be. I think they're going to try to get him in the $9 to $10 million range. If they can't, I think they do walk. I don't think they go into the $14 million range. And then I think you end up on a Tyler Algier or Kenneth Gainwell. Those are the two guys I like as the end of the next tier.
We know Algier well for sure.
And you look at the draft. If that's the area you land, you look at the draft beyond that. Alvin Kamara, we'll see if he's on the roster. I wouldn't be surprised if he's just mulling retirement right now, and that's why the Saints have kind of chosen to get that flexibility now, or they have that ability to get the flexibility now. And if he retires, you're in the same boat. And then there's a few others. I think tight end is a sneaky need on this team, and I think Dallas Goedert is a guy that if I'm the Saints, I'm going after hard. If not Dallas, then you look at a Cade Otton, who's been with the Bucs, is a good player. Chigakonkwo, we saw late in the year with the Titans, another big dude. And then two other low end guys that I think could be in the mix is Daniel Bellinger and Will Dissly.
I know Dissly had some decent run with the Seattle Seahawks and was one of those guys I was always adding and dropping in fantasy football. If I was desperate for play at that tight end spot, because man, I'm terrible at drafting in fantasy when it comes to tight end position.
He was also with the Chargers when Kellen was there, so there's some familiarity.
A little connection, right?
Beyond that, wide receiver we can talk about later on, but yeah, if DeMario leaves and I'm looking at a Quay Walker and I'm seeing if I can bring him in, Nakobe Dean, and then some low end options, you could look at a Devin White. Who, do you see? Devin White had 174 tackles last year.
Yes, so much for him being washed.
Well, it was on the Raiders, so they were terrible. But that's an insane number. It just doesn't make sense to me, because he couldn't get on the field with the Eagles. He somehow had 174 tackles.
Right.
So let's look at a few other ones. New Orleans Barble says, I don't agree with Jeff on our guys. They're talking about Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, letting them walk, and I understand. I understand the kind of the emotional investment. You don't want to see them leave. You don't want to see them in another jersey. I don't know. If you're going to eat the dead cap hit anyway, which I think you should if you can, which, you're looking at when we talk about the cap space that the Saints have, that's accounting for Taysom Hill, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, and Foster Moreau, who we haven't really talked about. All those dead cap charges, that's already accounted for in there. So they don't have to do anything, and they can absorb it. Do they want to absorb it is the question. And I don't know. I like the idea of going into 2027 with the cleanest cap sheet possible and only new money, right? Only money for players that I expect to be here beyond 2027 on the cap table. So you're talking Chris Olave, you're talking about a top end guard, you're talking about a running back who will be on a 2 to 3 year contract. If you bring in the tight end, you're talking about a 2 to 3 year contract. Like I can't continue to just shovel money down the road when it's not producing for me. And frankly, there's nothing you can look at over the last 5 years and say, okay, this has all worked. So that's where I'm at with it. I wouldn't hate to have them back. I love those guys. I think they're great players. They're great teammates in the locker room. I've spent a lot of time talking to them over the last 4 or 5 years. But at a certain point, you can't just continue to run it back with the same faces just for vibes.
To me, I think you need to keep one of them, like I mentioned before, just for the fact of having that leadership in the locker room. And if both of those pieces and Demario Davis and Cam Jordan are playing elsewhere next year, man, that's a big hit to the Saints locker room.
Yeah, it is, but you'll move forward. Like you'll establish new leaders. Like you'll figure it out. We'll see. Ooh, Adam Troutman. Oh, that was yesterday. They signed Adam Troutman to a 3-year contract. The Broncos did, but Sean Payton just can't quit Adam Troutman, which is fascinating to me. All right. New Orleans Barbles also says, how can we get off Rattler and Cesar Ruiz? This is an interesting one to me because I understand why people don't like Ruiz. He's going to be around. I don't think he's nearly as bad as people want to make it out to be. I do think he could be better. He should be better than he is. So it's kind of in the middle ground, but the Saints aren't looking to get off that contract. I think the goal is to plug in a player at left guard and figure it out. The funny part about it here is like everyone wants to talk about, we need to move off Cesar Ruiz. Like Eric McCoy is the much bigger question mark in that mix.
Just because of health, right?
Yeah. And I mean, people like we all know Eric McCoy is a good player. He's a great player. But if he's not there, then he's a zero. Right? At least Caesar's been available. And I think Caesar is a better player when he's next to Eric McCoy. I think one of the reasons you look at your guards and say the guards aren't good enough is because both the guards are playing next to a backup center who's going to get overpaid this year in Luke Fortner. I'm fascinated to see what happens there.
I was going to bring that up to him, like, and the backup center is on the free agent market.
Yeah, and as far as for Caesar, I think if you can avoid restructuring that contract, I want to. Like, if I can get everything I need to get done and not restructure Cesar Ruiz, I'm okay with it. If it comes down to, hey, you can restructure Caesar or Pete Werner, I'd rather restructure Pete Werner. It's like $4 million versus $6 million. But I'm okay riding that contract out and understanding I have a league average guard. He's just a former first round pick, so you want more than league average. But you're talking about a guy who was PFF had 13th in pass blocking at the guard position, way down low in run blocking, and that's been the issue.
It's been tough for Ruiz too, because I feel like when he does have a bad snap, that definitely gets highlighted and played over and over on social.
And he has more than his fair share of bad snaps.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not here saying that you should be enamored with Cesar Ruiz. I am saying that there's a lot worse options out there. And unless you have someone to replace him that is a better option, which the Saints do not have and will be a lot harder to find than people make it out to be, then I'm not just trying to get rid of him. I want to solve my left guard spot, and then I'll worry about the right guard spot. Like, I think my plan would be, hey, I want to sign a top-end guard, and then I want to sign a lottery ticket dart throw type guard like an Evan Neal, and then I want to draft someone I can develop in the 4th or 5th round, and then go from there.
And I mean, you still, we mentioned Luke Fortner. Can you afford to bring him back? If not, you need a reliable option behind McCoy.
Highly doubtful, just based on what you see with I mean, if you see some of these, these interior linemen are getting paid, man. Like, you see some of these contracts numbers that people are throwing around, and like, what's Tyler Linderbaum going to get? So we'll see. Like, if he ends up making like $8 million a year, there's no way. You just can't afford that on backup, and you just gotta hope. Last year their plan was Will Clapp. So
now he's a coach.
Now he's an assistant coach. But no, I mean, I think you could feasibly look at the trade market too. I mean, that's always something. And to get to this, the other part of this question is Spencer Rattler. I don't think the Saints are eager to move Spencer Rattler. I really don't.
I mean, if somebody comes a calling and wants to is ready to pony up some draft capital, I'm sure they'd listen. But yeah, I don't think they're desperately trying to move on from Rattler.
No, because you need a backup.
Yeah.
And so if you trade Spencer Rattler, what do you like? Look at what a guy like Andy Dalton gets paid. And I'm not saying they should go out and sign Andy Dalton, but like, you're talking about a 2-year, $8 million contract for 38-year-old Andy Dalton. Like, backup quarterbacks aren't cheap, but the Saints happen to have a cheap backup quarterback who has 14 career starts. So like, I think there's inherent value there, and he's a guy who knows the system, so you don't have to worry about that. Like, he works well with Tyler Shucks, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, if there's a situation and someone comes calling, fantastic. I just don't think the Saints are going to be kind of, knocking down doors to find a trade partner for him. Maybe in year 4, because you'd be on an expiring contract. Maybe you draft a quarterback. Like, I don't think that excludes you from drafting a quarterback and developing him. Who knows? Maybe even Hunter Deckers comes back this year. But I'm more than happy keeping my very, very inexpensive quarterback room together for one more year.
Yeah, because the breaking case of glass emergency, if God forbid anything happens to Tyler Shuck, like you mentioned with Rattler, a guy that's been there, done that, and knows Kellen Moore's system and could easily be inserted, and you're not going to think you're going to have this major drop-off when it comes to your chances at winning football games.
I'm not trading. I also think that Rattler's market could continue to go up. Like, I think right now you'd be trying to get him back for his draft slot, which would be a 5th-round pick, which that's not more valuable than an inexpensive backup quarterback. But what happens if Tyler Shuck gets hurt, misses 3 games, and Spencer comes in and does the Teddy Bridgewater thing and just plays well, wins a couple games, and then suddenly you're looking at like, wow, he Kevin Kolb. Remember Kevin Kolb?
Yeah, of course.
He was the Eagles, right?
Yep.
I can't remember what they traded him for, but it was way more than he was worth. Because he would come in for Donovan McNabb, and suddenly it's like, wow, Kevin Kolb's pretty good. And then the Cardinals traded for him, and they traded way more than they should have.
Oh, he's not good without Andy Reid. Oh well,
he's just not good, right? and Matt Castle, very similar situation. Jimmy Garoppolo for the Patriots, right? Like, the most hilarious thing that happened in that Patriots tenure was Tom Brady got suspended for there was the Deflategate suspension where he smashed his phone, and they ended up having to start Jimmy Garoppolo. Right? They lost the 2nd-round pick in the penalties for Deflategate, but because Tom Brady was suspended, because Tom Brady was suspended, Jimmy Garoppolo had to play, and he played well enough that they traded him to the 49ers for a 2nd-round pick. So the penalties actually washed out.
And we have a little bit of breaking news in the running back market. You can take Kenneth Walker off the list. He is going to be signing, according to Adam Schefter, which is pretty, reliable source.
Yeah.
Kansas City Chiefs.
Chiefs?
Right. Wow.
Ooh, okay. Okay. We have numbers?
No, just the signing with Kansas City per source for sure.
It had to be good
Schefter.
Because otherwise he would have ridden it out a little longer. Like, they had to make him a pretty hefty offer. Man, what are the Seahawks doing? Are they just playing with house money now because they won? Because they have cap space.
Right, and I guess they figured they're going to keep at it with Charbonnet, who was hurt at the end of the year, and then add another one to their running back room.
I did not see that coming at all. Well, that there was some concern that the Chiefs might try to leapfrog the Saints,
right,
to get Jeremiah Love. Well, you can cross that off the list, because they're going to definitely go kind of interior line now. Probably try to get one of those. They could end up with a top tackle theoretically, if the board goes the way that a lot of mock drafts think it's going to go, and the top like they could get a Spencer Fano or somebody like that. Wow. Yeah,
Field Yates just echoed what you said. Every mock draft with Jeremiah Love to the Chiefs at pick 9 can now be shredded. Parentheses, I don't think he gets the pick 9 anyways.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, that's the big, like, what's the fallout for the Saints? It's hey, okay, there's a lot less competition from the market behind them. There's still a lot of competition for the market ahead of them. It doesn't sound like the Giants are going to be going in on a running back. They did bring back Devin Singletary at a significant discount. So we'll see how that goes. Elton Mathern says appreciate the content, which I appreciate you for experiencing the content. Let's see. JPG, Jerry G. Poirier says, will the Saints get guard David Edwards? It's tough, right? Because I do think there's a degree to which having an exciting young quarterback very much helps you in that conversation, right? Whereas if you were trying to sign a marquee free agent and pair him with 38-year-old Andy Dalton, just for an example, like a guy that people just, if you went and signed Geno Smith, people would be like, "Nah," Whereas I think Tyler Shuck, you look at Cardinal Tate talking in pre-draft interviews, like listing, what quarterbacks do you want to play for, and throwing Tyler Shuck in the mix. Like that happens when you start to end up on the radar of some of these top options. I don't know. We'll see. But I think they should be in the bidding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious if that's too high of the market for the Saints to be attacking the guard spot. I wouldn't mind it, although investing those assets for sure, because to me it's definitely the top need in free agency. This team has to add for sure.
I think Zion Johnson ends up being the guy.
Right.
It just makes sense. Like they have familiarity. He's younger. I think he's like 26. He's probably going to be closer to 18 million as opposed to 28 million, right? I think this is the year of the guard, the year of the interior lineman. Everyone's going to get overpaid, and the Saints are just kind of frustratingly in a position where it's just something they desperately need right now, and they're going to pay the year of the guard premium, right? Like the last couple of years has been the year of the wide receiver, year of the defensive end. Now you're talking about year of the guard. So we'll see.
Sure. Great. That's the top position the Saints need to add for this offseason.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying. Like their timing is terrible.
Right.
But that's what happens when you just whiff in the draft and you like it would have been great if Trevor Penning had ended up being that guy. He wasn't, and I think that became clear pretty quickly. You appreciate his willingness to move positions and to give it a try, but he just doesn't have it.
You mentioned with Penning, curious to see if he gets another reclamation project possibly somewhere. I'm sure he will because of the size that he has. But man, oh man, what a huge letdown he has been.
Penning?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he's gone. He's gone. He can't let me down anymore. The down has already been let.
But even I'm just curious, is any team even going to go out and sign him? Probably.
Someone will sign him for a very low end contract. He's a backup.
Yeah.
Right. And I think he'll be a decent backup. What he has going for him is he's played 3 different spots on the offensive line. And while he has not excelled at any of those spots, it's going to set him up for a reasonably long career as that depth swing tackle option, because you've seen a guy play on the left side, play on the right side, play inside, play outside. There are worse things in the world than being James Hurst, than being Landon Young. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's where, if I'm Trevor, that's what I need. I need to be able to play multiple positions. Austin Richards this year for the Saints, right? Like whenever somebody went down, it was like, okay, it's probably Awesome who's going in there. The results, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to make an awesome pun. LSU Express says, good. Didn't want Walker anyway. I prefer Etienne. I do too. I think it would be fun. Maybe you could sign Travis and Trevor and just have an Etienne party.
No surprise seeing on the socials too, Jeff. Tight end Kate Otten is re-signing with Tampa Bay.
He is re-signing. Okay, take him off my list.
Right.
The tight end market's going to be really interesting because there's a lot of mid-tier tight ends. There's no top-end tight ends. Like you got Travis Kelce on there, but he's old man Travis Kelce. Like Dallas Goedert's up there. Chigakonko is up there. David Njoku is up there. But is anyone getting paid top market? I don't think so. And I the Saints had really bad timing in terms of when they needed a guard. I think they have good timing right now if they want to make a splash in the tight end market. And that is traditionally how they've chosen to address the tight end position, is to go in on a free agent, not necessarily go in with high draft investment. It hasn't worked out for them a majority of the time, but I could see him doing it again.
No, there definitely been some whiffs at the tight end spot for sure.
I would, so Dallas Goedert and Chig Okonkwo are the two that I'm really fascinated by. Like Chig, I think he was the Titans' leading receiver last year. And I have noticed that when a player has a good performance against the Saints, it tends to lead to them having warm fuzzies in free agency. I don't know if that's a coincidence, but
left that lasting impression.
That stiff arm on Kool-Aid where you just ragdoll him. Maybe it left an impression. I don't know. What's Chig's size? Let's see. I think he's big, but I have a hard time gauging like what's big relative to tight end position. Oh, he's smaller than I realized. He's only 6'2". So that doesn't necessarily fit. Because I need a bigger bodied blocking tight end.
By the way, numbers, if you're interested, Kenneth Walker, 3 years, 43, and it could be worth up to 45 million and gets 28.7 guaranteed.
14?
Man.
That's a lot. That's a lot for the running back position.
Printing money in the NFL.
But it does, I mean, so average per year. So in 2020, let's see. We had Michael Giannetti on, so I feel obligated to use Spot Track for this. Let's see, 2026 average per year at the running back position. So Saquon's going to be at 20, Christian McCaffrey's 19, Derrick Henry 15, Breece Hall at about 14, but that's a franchise tag. So they basically signed him for the franchise tag price, just over 4 years. So it's not a terrible contract. Jonathan Taylor's making $14 million. So yeah, but I do think that that does kind of set the range pretty well for if the Saints do want to go in after Etienne. I think 10 million is a palatable number, and that's probably where I would set him. Like if Kenneth Walker had signed for like 18 million a year, then you would be looking at, okay, what's the step down? Well, the next top contract be 14. So we'll see. I like the idea of like a 3-year, $32 million. Give him the Juwan Johnson contract.
I mean, the Chiefs definitely, we knew were in the market for their running back here, but man, I don't know, 14 mil for Kenneth Walker. I know he's a Super Bowl MVP, so that price tag gets bumped up a lot. But man, he's dealt with injuries too. I
also don't buy that the Chiefs offense is going to make a running back look good. They like the way they operate is like exclusively out of the shotgun. You require it requires players to constantly be playing off Pat Mahomes extending. And I guess that's something Kenneth Walker can do, but like I think overpaying at the running back position is a mistake for them. I think they would have served way better sitting in the draft and maybe taking a Jeremiah Love but hey, what do I know? They're the one team that wins Super Bowls. All right. Borderly says, who would be a bigger loss for this season, Cam Jordan or DeMario Davis?
I think the bigger loss is DeMario because he's your starting Mike linebacker.
I think the loss to me is less about ability and more about communication and just understanding the defense and what the other team wants to do. Right? Like over the last 2 to 3 years, you haven't seen DeMario making plays because of his elite athleticism, which still up there, but definitely has fallen off to some degree. You're seeing him making plays because he gets there and he knows where it's going and he gets that first step. He's also on the field every play, so just in the sense of like, okay, how many snaps are you losing? You're losing a lot more snaps with DeMario than you're losing with Cam. I don't know. It's tough to say. I wouldn't mind seeing the Saints go take Sonny Styles at number 8. Like if they're just like, hey, we want to get younger, we want to get more athletic. it doesn't make sense to pay DeMario. We can eat that dead cap hit and then go draft the most athletic player I've ever seen in my life. Go draft the 6'5" guy who runs a 4.4 40, and could theoretically play outside for you if you needed him to. Like, he could rush the passer at that size. I don't know. Like, one of my big critiques of this Saints defense over the past, like, over the final 3 years of Dennis Allen's tenure, really, is they just weren't athletic enough. Like, you go around the NFL and you see these like insane, like just meta-human athletes. And then you look at the Saints roster and you just see a lot of kind of like plotting athletes. Like, how about we just add a premier athlete at the linebacker spot and see what happens? I don't know. I think there'd be worse things.
They definitely have that premier dude in Chase Young. I mean, we know he's that physical specimen for them. And I just wish his run stopping abilities could get a little bit of a boost. And his pass rushing definitely is an A, but run blocking, run containment for Chase isn't his strongest suit.
Yeah, no, I agree. We got Daryl Hayden says, should we take the number 6 wide receiver at 42 or take the second best guard tight end at 42? And I understand the comment. I guess it comes down to value, right? I think this is I mean, if you don't sign a top end guard, then you probably have to take the top guard available at 42. I'd much rather say, what's the scouting? Like, like the relative number in the class, like, this is not a great year for tight ends. Like the last couple of years, you've had like premier tight end prospects, even like a Colston Loveland. I don't think you have a tight end prospect even remotely close to that. Like last year, you had Loveland and Tyler Warren, and this year, I don't know if you have a first round tight end. Who is the top tight end? I can't even think of the names.
Rod receiver, to me too, I feel like has a little more depth there, like for the second round. And maybe you can land the guy from Louisville to pair up with Tyler Shuck.
Yeah, so you're talking about a Kenyon Sadiq. I guess he could be a first-round guy. Eli Stowers has climbed up a lot because of his combine performance. I don't know. I don't love the idea of a tight end in round 2. I do like the idea of drafting a tight end. I do like the idea of investing more. I don't think you have to invest a second-round pick. As far as guard, yeah, if the guy's there, if you have a really high grade on a guy and he's there, great, fantastic. And you kind of look at it and say, you can plop this guy behind Cesar Ruiz, let him develop, and then when it comes down to it, I'd love the idea of being able to replace injured guys with high-end talent. That's been one of the things that the Saints have never really done at the offensive line spot is establish premier depth options. They're always I'm trying to think of some of the names, like the James Hursts or the Will Claps even. This year you had Awesome Richards. Like, you're talking about kind of low-end options. It would be nice to, that like when the Eagles had to move on from Jason Kelsey and they dropped Cam Jurgens in there and they didn't miss a beat. Like, that's what you really should be doing when you consider how frequently offensive linemen go down with injuries. Like Cesar Ruiz, I feel like sprained 6 different ankles this year. Tali Fuaga sprained both ankles. And it's just, you watch these plays and the kind of scrum they end up in. It's amazing it doesn't happen more often. But so we'll see. Like, I still like the idea of a wide receiver in the second round. But he's right. It would be, you look at a position and say, okay, you're going for a depth piece in this at the wide receiver spot, or you're going for the top end piece at the guard spot. I think nickel corner is also into play at 42.
Yeah, sadly, I feel like the tight end pool isn't as, plentiful as it has been recently.
I think there's some interesting names as you get down the line. But if the top end name is Kenyon Sadiq, how many Sadiqs can New Orleans have at one time? That's a bad joke. It's a bad joke. But Sadiq Bey has been playing well. So
Sadiq Bey has definitely been my highlight for the Pelicans this year.
Yeah, the big move they made was the Sadiq Bey trade in the offseason.
For sure.
Not the Jordan Poole trade, the Sadiq Bey trade. But all right, I think is there anything else you want to get into, or we can close this thing out?
No, right now I'm just refreshing X and finding out all these deals coming through.
Any other good ones?
Jalen Phillips has agreed to a 4-year, $120 million deal with the Panthers, $80 million guaranteed. So leaving the Philadelphia Eagles.
What did the Eagles trade for him?
Oh, I forget.
I feel like they gave up something significant. Let's see. 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they traded a 3rd round pick for a rental.
Right.
Like that's not insignificant. And here's the thing, like, this is not when the Eagles should be. Like, the Eagles are currently where the Saints were in like 2019, 2020.
Yes.
Where they had a couple really, really strong draft classes, and they have a title window, and they're paying everybody. The reason they had to trade for AJ Brown was because they made a terrible pick at the wide receiver spot, and they had to do something. And we're talking about Jalen Reagor, who was picked 1 pick ahead of Justin Jefferson. But they made some really nice draft picks in between then and now. But they are now at that stage where the Saints were in 2019, where it's like, you got to keep nailing drafts, or these numbers are going to catch up to you really, really quickly. And you see them paying Jordan Davis at the top of the nose tackle market, like resetting the market. If they do not maximize their draft picks, they're going to be right where the Saints are right now in a couple of years, which is at the tail end of a painful cap drawdown. So you don't want to be flipping third like that. And that was the mistake the Saints made, is they just kind of flipped away 2nd round picks, 3rd round picks, and it catches up to you. Because the only way you can make ends meet when you have all of this dead cap and the bonus structure that they're pushing out into the future is by bringing in young talent. So if they start missing on the draft, my predictions of an Eagles demise are going to be speeding up.
And Jeff, I'm thinking Aaron Rodgers is definitely coming back. We just have a trade announced from Adam Schefter. Michael Pittman, the Colts are sending him to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that Aaron's coming back, but it does mean that who's the head coach for the Steelers now?
Mike McCarthy.
Mike McCarthy. I always forget that.
He's an easy guy to forget.
Yeah, and they basically just flipped over. Like, who's the most Mike Tomlin-y coach that you could have added? Okay, Mike McCarthy. Even the same name. But no, that's it. That's an Jalen Phillips is an interesting one, and so he signed with the Panthers. So that's going to impact the Saints to some degree. They're going to have to face him twice a year. Interesting. Panthers are loading up. They think they got a 10-win season in there somewhere. I don't buy it.
Just interested to me that the Colts, they signed Alec Pierce, and now they're willing to move on from Michael Pittman Jr.
They could only afford one of them. They can only afford one of them once because here's the thing: the Colts manage their salary cap straight up, right? So they're actually pretty easy to predict what they're going to do. So when they franchise tag Daniel Jones, they really had no choice. They could only afford one of those two guys, and so it became, hey, do you want to keep Michael Pittman or do you want to pay big for Alec Pierce? And they decided to pay big for Alec Pierce, and that immediately meant. Because they didn't just like they had to trade Michael Pittman or they wouldn't have been cap compliant in 2 days. So that's the issue, is they got to be cap compliant by March 11th. Now the Saints, they always have a lever to pull, and they're always willing to pull it and to get that number down. The Colts don't really do that. So that's why everyone knew with the second they paid Alec Pierce, they needed to trade Michael Pittman. No, I think this live stream has worked out because the whole point was like, we're not overreacting to stuff, and then it changes the second we get done with the pod. But we've been able to hit on a good couple of these deals,
and we're still waiting for something significant for the Saints to do at this point.
I didn't expect the Saints to be in this early window, and I'd be surprised if they sign anybody prior to the start of official free agency. Maybe tomorrow, maybe they come in.
See, I was thinking possibly, you'd hear them in on a big guard target.
Yeah, and they could be. That doesn't mean they sign them.
Right.
Right. And to this point, we haven't seen a single one of those guards get inked to a deal.
Yeah.
Like some of the dominoes that you knew were going to fall have fallen. I'm really surprised that Kenneth Walker didn't play this out a little longer. Because
I guess Kansas City came a call and he's like, I'm there.
Yeah, but you think he could have played the market a little bit more. And in a lot of instances, you'd be like, okay, he wants to go get a ring, but he just won a ring. So why is he in a rush? That's a strange one to me. Because I don't think $14 million a year was going to be blowing away the rest of the market. Maybe the length of the deal, maybe the guaranteed money is what did it for him. It does seem like a high guarantee, but interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to even see where's
one last thing that Daryl brought up, and we can mention it. Yeah, that David Edwards and Will Clapp were teammates in Buffalo, not this past season, but the year before that. So there is some relationship there. So maybe that greases the skids a little bit, but I mean, David Edwards is going to play where the money is. It probably doesn't hurt that Will Clapp and him have a relationship, but if the Saints aren't competitive with the salary, it doesn't. He's like, oh, Will, I love you, but you're not right. Worth $6 million a year to me.
We'll grab a cup of Joe together and catch up.
Yeah, next time you're in, I don't even know. That's one thing that I haven't really done is looked around and seen who are the competitive teams in the guard market. Like who are the other teams that are like, I got a guard. I don't really know. So maybe the Bears. I don't know.
I had to see. Okay. I was like, maybe Kenneth Walker grew up in Missouri, but no, he's a Tennessee guy.
K9. Anyway, all right. I think that's going to be it. Ooh. Malik Willis to the Dolphins.
Wow.
Really, guys? 3 years, $67.5 million with $45 million guaranteed. Oh, man. That's actually a lot smaller than I thought it would be. I thought he was going to get in the $30 million range. So you're talking 22.5. That's a good deal for the Dolphins. I still don't think he's going to be good. I don't know. They're basically basing this off of like 27 dropbacks that he had over the last 2 years.
When this whole, everyone's talking about free agents, they're like, oh, Malik Willis is going to be at the top of the market here. And I'm like, ew.
That's very telling of what this quarterback market is right now. Like the Dolphins, the Dolphins this year are going to be on the hook for $123 million for the quarterback position, and only $23 million of that is going to the player on the roster. No, actually, they made him a post-June 1 cut. So next 2 years, they're going to be effectively paying 70-something million at the quarterback spot. Good for them. That's what good teams do. Good for Malik. I really felt bad for Malik on draft night because like whoever was telling him where he was going to get picked was just a bold-faced liar. He was sitting in that green room on the first night of the draft. He didn't go until the third round. That was the Kenny Pickett year. Anyway,
man, I'm just seeing more from the Malik Willis deal, and 45 is fully guaranteed of this deal. Okie doke. Oh. Giants are signing Isaiah Likely.
Oh my God. Haven't they learned by now? John Simpson, 3 years, $30 million to go back to Baltimore.
Okay.
Isaiah Likely, 3 year, $40 million contract with incentives. Yeah, Likely is that's a massive overpay. But hey, the Giants are the Giants. They're where talented players go to quit. I mean, like they think of the Kenny Golladay contract, the Darren Waller contract. Like both those guys literally stopped being NFL players.
Maybe things will be different with Harbaugh.
I hope so. But that it also does make the Harbaugh. I didn't even make the Harbaugh connection, but that makes sense because obviously Isaiah was his guy. Goddard? Anyone? Did Goddard?
Yeah, we mentioned them for sure.
We have talked about Dallas Goedert, and that's my top target. If I'm the Saints, I'm going after Dallas Goedert for the same reason that I assume the Giants were like, hey, we're going to bring in a guy that's familiar with our new head coach. Dallas Goedert would be that dude for me. But all right, every time we try to end the stream, something else pops up.
Drops,
so we're gonna do it. I'll plan to come on later in the week and do a kind of a quick recap of any move the Saints make. But we went through a lot. This has been a long mailbag, and hope it's not too dated by the time the podcast gets out there. As mentioned, I will be posting the Michael Giannetti interview in the feed, in the YouTube feed as we go along. Probably later on today. A lot of good insight from him. He does a great job over with Spot Track. But all right, Steve, feeling good, feeling great,
feeling good, man. Let's make some moves. Let's spend some money.
Let's do it. It's me making it rain. I don't have any money to make it rain with, though. I don't think I have a literal dollar in my house.
I was going to say, I can't even make it rain with change.
Yeah, I might have some pennies downstairs. I can just chuck those around. Anyway, all right. Who dat? Go Saints. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Hit us up on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak, at Steve Gelly WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. Yeah, we'll keep doing it. Make sure to leave a rating, review wherever you get your podcasts. And till the next time.
Who dat?